And we welcome you to be on the box score here on Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. As we are nearly done with 7 weeks of fantasy football, the number one quarterback per game is
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson is Stan's guess. Jacob?
I would have also said Lamar Jackson. I don't know.
I didn't say it was wrong. You can stick with that.
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's, of course, Russell Wilson. And in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues before Russell Wilson, it was Baker Mayfield. And 4-point, it was Lamar Jackson. We look forward to watching them duke it out tonight. And if Lamar Jackson scores like 45 fantasy points, I am quitting fantasy football forever, because that would mean I would lose on that. Pittsburgh 37, Jets 15. We'll start with that. But our big topics today are Javonte Williams, Chase Brown. Are these guys going to be top 12 running backs moving forward? We talk about just the quarterback position in general and some second half sleepers. And of course, we'll have advanced metrics and snap shares and all those types of things. Wait till you hear the Bills receiver stats when Amari Cooper was on the field versus off the field. But here we go. Pittsburgh 37, Jets 15. Dan, which team would you like to talk about first, Jets or Steelers?
I think we should definitely talk about the Steelers first, because obviously we've got a new offense in place with Russell Wilson. I think Jacob had the best stats on these. So I'm going to leave it to him when it comes to the boxes that Najee Harris faced versus with Russell Wilson versus with Justin Fields. I think it just comes down to a very common misconception in sports. A lot of people, don't know why teams will face stacked boxes or defenses who are sitting on short routes or driving aggressively to fill run gaps. And the reality is, doesn't matter who's at running back. That's not what stacks a box. Doesn't matter who's at receiver. That's not what stacks a box or doesn't stack a box. It's all about the quarterback. And that's how defenses scheme to stop offenses. Russell Wilson took shots early. They were completed. I think George Pickens did most of the work, but they were still high and in the air and catchable. And what that did is it opened up the entire offense. And as Jacob will tell you in a minute, it changed the boxes that Najee Harris saw, which allowed him to have his best game of the season. So I think it's a totally different outlook for this entire team. George Pickens and Najee Harris, to me, benefit the most for obvious reasons. But this whole offense is going to be different if Russ is just going to keep taking those shots downfield. And nothing tells us he won't, because he's not the same player he was. He still can't escape the same way when the pocket collapses, and his deep ball doesn't look as good as it used to be. But he still throws them, and he still puts enough air under those things and enough anticipation on his throws that he can get the ball out there. So I think the offense changes entirely with Russ.
Okay, the man with the master stats.
Yeah, I'll refute Dan just a little bit. Derrick Henry is one running back where it does matter who the running back is. I think personnel is also really big when it comes to stack boxes, like how many tight ends you're using, how many big sets you're using. So Jordan Mason leads the NFL with a 37% stacked box rate this year for reference. Najee Harris was at 20% with Justin Fields, a quarterback. It was only 5% this week. The percentage of his rushes versus light boxes went way up as well. It was 29% with Fields, 52% with Wilson. So obviously we saw Najee have the best game that he's had all season. But I also wanted to point out that the split between him and Jaylen Warren was 50-50 this week for the first time all year. And I think if we see them in more neutral game script, we could see some better days for Jaylen Warren, who I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, Najee, look, he had a 13-yard touchdown run on the last play of the game, or the last play of the game for the Steelers. And he ends up with 21 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. He had one catch in this game. No, he had 0 catches, I think, on one target in this game. And he played the last 2 games with Jaylen Warren back. Najee Harris has played 46% and 49% of the snaps. He did so much of his damage in the fourth quarter, which is encouraging. This is the thing with Najee Harris. If he doesn't score a touchdown most weeks, you're not getting much. And it's been the case really for most of his career, but we've seen these stretches where the Steelers offense has played better. He's been on pretty bad offenses for his career. When the Steelers offense plays a little bit better and starts scoring more, it benefits Najee Harris. So he needs to score. I don't really think he's going to be like a dynamic rusher, even though he's had 2 pretty good games in a row. You guys feel free to disagree. I still think it's going to be about volume and it's going to be about touchdowns.
This Jets defense has been pretty easy to run on this year.
They're kind of a shell of themselves, especially in the secondary. They lost 2 more safeties last night. They were already without 2 starters in their secondary, including DJ Reed, their number 2 corner, which was interesting because it did mean Sauce Gardner didn't exactly shadow George Pickens, but he did travel more than he usually does. And in terms of Wilson, guys, Dan, you kind of said it. Like this was really a George Pickens game. He made 3 terrific catches. The touchdown was underthrown. The juggled ball was underthrown. And the jump ball down the deep ball was a good throw, but also like a better catch.
Yeah.
Pickens was freaking awesome. 5 catches.
I will say one thing on that note, though. While I do agree with your assessment of the location of the ball on the touchdown to Pickens, what stands out to me is the processing, the anticipation, how fast that ball was out from Russ. And that's what they're getting from Russ versus Justin Fields. Justin Fields, the release time, the way he gets into his drop, all of it takes so long. And that's why the balls were late a lot. A lot of those throws were late. This was the whole idea behind going to Russ. Get the offense more on time. Get the ball out faster. Give these receivers a chance to make plays. And at least last night, that was the case. We'll see if it can continue.
I'm going to refute Dan again. The average time to throw is 3 seconds for Russ, which is a little bit high. And it's kind of always been a thing with him. And even on in-pocket throws, it was 2.7. The average is 2.5.
I'm talking about on that throw, on that touchdown pass.
Okay.
And on specific design.
I do think it's still
there's still going to be a super high.
Fields.
It's still going to be a super high time to throw because Russ is like that. You're right.
Yeah.
But on those design plays where where you can get the ball out, it's just the drop back. You can watch how they throw the football. Justin Fields has always had kind of.
It's definitely better than Fields.
And the thing with Pickens, I talked about this with Pickens earlier. I think on the preview, on the AFC home game preview. Think about how differently you'd feel about his game if he had caught 2 touchdowns that he dropped, or his season going into this game. And now there's only one wide receiver in football that has a higher target share than George Pickens, and it's Justin Jefferson. So I'm starting him every week. He's got a high ADOT, but not like super high. It's 13-ish yards. It was over 16 yesterday. So like, there's going to be some boom or bust profile there. But if they just start throwing a little bit more and throwing a little bit better, it's like what Heath was saying about Hunter Henry with Drake May versus Hunter Henry with Jacoby Brissett. It's obviously a big upgrade for Pickens.
Right.
That's almost 30% of the team's targets. It's crazy. On the Jets side of the ball, guys, they need to start hitting deep balls. They have 1 completion this year of 30 or more air yards. There are the only other teams with fewer completion. The only teams with fewer completions, 0 completions of 30 or more air yards, are the Chargers, the Browns, and oddly enough, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the Jets, I don't know. I look at this team and I'm like, God, they are loaded, right? How do they go out and score 15 points yesterday? Dan, what's your take on the Jets?
From an overall standpoint, not fantasy, I'll give this quick line. I've never seen a team find more creative ways to lose football games than this Jets team. It is crazy to watch. But from the offensive standpoint, obviously there's frustration here with the addition of Davante Adams, and they still haven't really been able to generate the big plays. I like that Garrett Wilson saw more time in the slot with Adams now on the roster. I think that's a good way to get him easier looks, more manufactured touches. He obviously had 9 targets, as I can see watching on YouTube. But ultimately, I just feel like this offense is a bit limited. I don't know if it's by the quarterback at this point or by the offensive line, but I don't have too much hope for them really finding any kind of second gear, even with the addition of Adams.
That's interesting. And by the way, Garrett Wilson had a season high 40% slot rate, but Davante Adams had possibly a career high 50.9% slot rate. That number on True Media doesn't track beyond 2017. So Adams was in the league in 2014, but since they started tracking his slot rate, that was the high. Last night was the highest slot rate of Davante Adams' career. He, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson all had 9 targets. Really, almost nothing downfield. And Jacob, I said that after this trade, I said the Jets 3rd in the NFL in pass attempts per game. I think they still are. They're throwing for a decent amount of yards. They have a quarterback who never runs. That's actually a pretty good recipe for 2 wide receivers to be really good. They got to stop throwing the ball to Breece Hall, I think, so much. But I still see a scenario where they're both really good. Like if they both get 9 targets a game, Wilson and Adams, that's probably going to be pretty solid. But obviously it needs to be better. And I know everybody's killing Aaron Rodgers, but I would just say there are a lot of teams that would kill to have Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback. If you think he's so bad, go watch the Giants game. And many other teams. But Jacob, what do you think about the Jets? Can they get it going? Can they give us big games?
I think they're going to give some big games. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the Steelers defense. Like they might be the best defense in the NFL. The Jets just play so slow though, that is concerning.
Yeah.
Like seriously, not even close between them and the next slowest team in terms of average remaining seconds on the clock at the snap of the ball. The slot note for Javonte Adams is really interesting to me too. Garrett Wilson had 6 of his 9 targets from the slot last night, so I would love to see him used that way more. He's one of the receivers who typically playing at the X, I studied this summer, typically playing at the X, the outside isolated receiver is a good thing for fantasy. It leads to more targets. He's one of the few that has had better splits when he's outside of that. So I was really hoping he'd get moved around more, but then things have just been so boring and static with Hackett's offense. So maybe better days are ahead for him. The only other Jets that I had was that Braylon Allen only had a 9% snap rate. Mm-hmm. And so it's like really all funneling through Breece Hall, which is what we want to see for fantasy.
I'm willing to give the Jets a little bit of patience here. At New England, then Houston at home, at Arizona, Indianapolis. Their schedule gets a lot better. And this is the first game with Davante Adams. Rodgers probably not healthy. You know, he's had all these lower body injuries. Hopefully he can get healthy, but I'm not panicking. I'm still like not even a question. I have Adams in 2 leagues. I'm starting him next week. I have Wilson in 1 league. I'm starting him next week. Of course, you're starting Breece Hall. So I'm willing to be a little bit patient here.
One note on this, I will say this: Aaron Rodgers' arm talent looks just as good as it's ever looked to me. Maybe not in his prime, but I don't think that's an issue at all here. But if you do look at some of the end game tape of his days with the Packers, his last season before the injury year, so 2022, there were a lot of issues on tape when it came to anticipation, when it came to the processing post snap, open receivers that he didn't pull the trigger on. A lot of people blamed it on just not having a rapport with those guys, because if you'll remember, Green Bay really recycled that wide receiver room. No Adams. But like, it's not like he has a great rapport with anyone here but Adams. So maybe that will be what saves the season. And I guess Lazard. Yeah. But there's the red zone offense. They're just not making that's where the windows tighten up, and they're not throwing a lot of touchdown bets to the Jets. You combine that with what Jacob said, which I thought was a great point, the slowest offense in the NFL. It's not a recipe that I'm going to buy into, just having a massive breakout second half.
Yeah, it does seem like if you're going to get value from Adams, Hall, and Wilson, then they're going to have to be one of the best offenses in football. And that's a little bit hard to see right now. What do you like? I'm not talking about, dude. Adam is not panicking. LMAO. The Jets were 4-3 with Zach Wilson last year. You don't know ball. I'm talking about fantasy football. You dope. Give me a break. By the way, their schedule is about.
That was not nice.
I mean, give me a break. Don't LMAO at me and tell me I don't know ball. Are you kidding? The Jets are going to get healthier on defense. They're a shell of themselves on defense right now, and their schedule is about to get easier.
Adam is doing his best impression of me right here.
I love it. I love it.
I love it too.
That comment is completely irrelevant to what we're talking about, which is fantasy football.
I love it. But
I mean, the Jets are. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I actually do think they have a lot of talent on their team. And it's like the Bengals are 3-4 right now, right? They were 1-4 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
I think people think the Bengals have a good chance to make the playoffs now. They probably didn't 2 weeks ago. They go and they beat the Giants and the Browns, and things are looking up. We'll talk more about the Bengals later, but I could see the Jets turning their season around. And you know what? Me and Brosy, I think we're good.
It's all right, bro.
I appreciate him. He's like in every chat. He's a pretty funny guy.
Great.
I didn't appreciate that comment though. No. All right, we're going to take a break in a moment here. But if you haven't signed up for BetMGM, use the bonus code FANTASY. We can all agree on that. We should all go sign up for the BetMGM app and use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Now here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app and you sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up on BetMGM. We will take a break, come back with some news and notes, updates on those injured quarterbacks, and some other stuff from Jacob at the advanced metrics, and then we'll get into our big topics. We'll be right back.
Get ready to raise your cup to Canadian football's biggest game of the year. There ain't no party like a Grey Cup party. November 17th on CBS Sports Network.
News and notes, and Daniel Jones seems kind of pissed off that he got benched. Probably should look in the mirror, but they are at Pittsburgh this upcoming week. I don't think that's going to go well, but he's going to be the starting quarterback. Carolina.
They say he's going to be the starting quarterback after the game. I remain skeptical. I think it's probable, but we'll see. I think there's a chance they could make a change late week.
Drew Lock was so bad in the preseason, and he looked horrible yesterday too. So if you're sitting there with Malik Neighbors thinking, "Oh, Drew Lock is the answer," I don't.
No. But the only reason I say that, I want to be clear, is because Adam Schefter retweeted a tweet he sent in September about Daniel Jones's injury guarantee, and that conversations may already be started among the Giants regarding that.
Yeah, man. I totally get it. Okay, but what are the other quarterback injuries? Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles, and Jayden Daniels getting X-rays on his ribs, and we don't have an update on Dorian Thompson-Robinson just yet. He's getting an update. Are we
going to be robbed of watching Jameis Winston because we have to watch Dorian Thompson-Robinson instead? I hope not.
Yeah, I'm hoping for Jameis there too. Running back news, there's really nothing. Wide receiver news, DK Metcalf, they think they avoided serious injury, and Brandon Ayuk, we're still waiting for confirmation, but they fear it's a torn ACL. And on the offensive line, I'll just update you throughout the week on that. I don't think there's anything huge there. What's the latest on Brian Burns, Dan?
He's been playing through this groin injury all year. Really bad, looked really bad yesterday, limping off the field, but I think he'll continue to play for the Giants.
Okay. And they had the second highest pressure rate in the NFL in week 7.
Yes.
So they really, I got to think about this for Russell Wilson, because they really have, the one good thing about the Giants is their pass rush.
They're still playing great football on defense.
This is a tough one. Kansas City cornerback Jaylen Watson, he fractured his ankle.
Yeah.
I've been watching some Kansas City tape, just trying to see if they're shadowing receivers with McDuffie, and they really haven't been. And I think Watson has been one of the reasons. He's played pretty darn well.
He's been really good.
So that's a tough break for them. Starting cornerback going to miss some time. Cincinnati safety Geno Stone has a leg injury. The Jets are super beat up. They're at New England next week. And that's pretty much all we need to cover in terms of news and notes. So, Jacob, let's get to some advanced metrics that you'd like to share with the class.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to start with one about Jayden Reed. And I also want to use this as an opportunity to plug the Beyond the Box Score show that Dan and I do. It's on FFT Express. You can find it on the YouTube channel on FFT Express. I've had some people tell me they don't know where to find it. They're like, I hear Adam talk about it, but I don't know where it's at. It's right here on YouTube. We do it every Thursday, and we had a great guest last week. It was Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers, and this week we have Nate Tice coming on. And Nate, I'm so excited for that one. I know Dan and I both. I don't know anybody who talks ball like he does.
He's amazing. He's fantastic. But can I just say something here? And Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong. So I went looking for the Mike Wright episode as well. So you go to youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. And if you click on the live tab, you'll see pretty much all of our videos. But I don't know if
it's not live. It's not a live show.
That one you're not gonna find the Thursday Beyond the Box Score in the live tab. Usually I click on live and then you'll see everything except for that. So you want to click on videos. Go to youtube.com/fantasyfootball today and then click on the videos tab. And then you'll see it clearly labeled Beyond the Box Score, which could be this one that you're listening to now, but you'll be able to tell the difference. So there will be multiple Beyond the Box Scores there. But that's why you may not be able to find it, because if you hit live, you will not find it. Please hit videos at youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, so we talked about some rest of season outlooks last week, and one of the guys I brought up was Jayden Reed. I was curious what they thought about him. I had a wide receiver 10 going into the week rest of season, and I got a lot of pushback that was too low. And Mike was like, I think that's totally fine. It might even be too high. He's like, I think it's important to remember that week 1 really influenced all of this per route, per target data that we look at with Jayden Reed, because he put up such crazy numbers in a game where there were weird field conditions. And so if you remove week 1, we're getting a bit Azer steady here. If you remove week 1, his per route data really doesn't look nearly as good. And I use per route data rather than just raw data because, of course, the Malik Willis games affect things for total numbers. But 21% target per route run rate since week 2, 7% first down per route run. Those rank 37th and 43rd among receivers. 2 yards per route run, that ranks 22nd among receivers. Just thought it was interesting. His role hasn't really changed at all. Romeo Doubs led the Packers in targets this week, and when Doubs is in the field this year, he leads the Packers in targets. Doubs does. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on Reed. Do you think maybe we got a little bit too excited with him? I know, Adam, you brought up when we've talked about in the past that there really haven't been any highly productive receivers who run as high of a percentage of their routes from the slot as he does. So.
Yeah. No, and he's got an interesting profile because I don't love the slot rate, but he is someone that, unlike other players that like a Tyler Boyd in the past, I had mentioned as a guy who's been successful, but with that kind of a slot rate. But, unlike a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, they will throw the ball downfield to Jayden Reed. So I will say, I think I said it yesterday, the Packers are one of those teams that you start Reed. I guess the difference is like, the difference between the Packers and the Niners is you're basically starting Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle every week before the injury and expecting one of them to stink. Your only guy that you're actually starting is Jayden Reed on a weekly basis. And there are going to be weeks where he stinks. Just not enough target volume. They spread the ball out too much. You just have to deal with that. There aren't that many wide receivers where it's like you never, ever expect them to struggle.
Right.
Reed is going to have some down weeks, but he is so good and so talented that I still think he's a must-start guy. Probably not top 10, though.
I'm with Adam on this. I missed him this preseason because of some of the rates that we just discussed and some of the concepts we just kind of hinted at, Jacob, where like, look, is he going to play a lot, and are the targets going to be there? But he's enough of a big playmaker. And I remember being wrong about him watching his before I watched his tape. I was like, I don't understand why this guy's being talked about as an interesting prospect in the class. And Nick, my co-host on Big Benter, was like, go watch his tape at Michigan State and you'll see it, because he doesn't have that 40 time. He's not huge, but he's a really good route runner. And so I think the key that you mentioned, Adam, is that he can also win on the vertical plane, and that's where some of the big plays could come from. But like you said, the reality of the situation is the targets may not be there every week, but in today's landscape in fantasy, how many, every week receivers do we even have? Like you said, Adam.
All right. I've got one more question for you guys. This is Giants specific, and then we'll get on to the regular, scheduled programming, talking about Brian Thomas Jr. and Erick and everything. What do you think about the running back split? Because we saw 67% snap rate for Tyrone and Tracy. Do you think that's just easing Singletary in?
I don't think it's just easing Singletary in, because I feel like Singletary was ready to go, healthy for this game. I think some of it was game script dependent, with the Giants falling behind by so much so early. Tracy is, like you said, Jacob, one of their passing out backs. Now, Tracy did miss a blitz pickup in this game, which is I'm not going to hold him accountable for that and say like that's it, because it's one play, but it's just something to keep an eye on as they move forward. He's going to have to be good in pass production, but I think it's clear that they realize he's one of their playmakers and he has to be on the field. I would think it's going to be at least a 50-50 split moving forward.
And Dan, I talked about Malik Neighbors yesterday, but I want to get your thoughts, because I don't want to overreact, but you and I were very nervous about the Andrew Thomas situation. Is it going to be this bad? What do you think?
It's a great topic to get on, because he's one of the most important players in fantasy football. And I want to give you credit. All week you said, I've seen it, I've watched it, I know it. And the Giants without Andrew Thomas is a much bigger problem than people realize. Not every team has this issue, but a team like the Giants, who have Josh Azudu as their next tackle, it becomes a major problem because Azudu can't pass protect, and they used a player to chip almost every single down. And what that does is it takes one player fewer in the route, which allows one fewer clear out route and more eyes and attention on Malik Neighbors, for example. The biggest issue I see is still not that, though. Like, it's still just the quarterback, but ultimately they're going to be limited to taking those deep shots, which Neighbors did make some plays on in the early half. A lot of his plays were after the catch, but there's not going to be as much space to go after the catch. And this was the nightmare we all were worried about in the preseason. Like, are they going to be so dysfunctional that Malik Neighbors will not be a weekly player? So I am a bit worried about it. But I don't think we're going to see it. A lot's going to change. I don't think Daniel Jones has many more starts in him. I think this will probably be his last game of the season against the Steelers. So it's going to change a lot once Locke gets in there. So I think we need to just wait this one out a little bit.
Yeah, he might struggle this week at Pittsburgh. Then the schedule is so much better for Neighbors. And I think Dan would also, we can just wrap on this. Also, you can back me up here. The right side of the Giants offensive line was terrible yesterday. And they actually have been pretty good. So
big regression game for Illuminor and for Greg Van Roten, their right tackle, right guard. That's the issue too, Adam, because some suggested we'll move Illuminor to left tackle to fix it. That's not going to fix the issue.
Right. But I would say they'll probably play better than they did yesterday. All right. Sure. Jacob, back to you, sir.
All right. Brian Thomas Jr. again led the Jaguars in routes run. That is exciting. That's back-to-back weeks. I thought that might not happen until later in the season, but it's already here. I also wanted to highlight Trevor Lawrence. He's getting the ball up much, much quicker. Average time to throw in the last 3 games is 2.4, 2.6, 2.37 seconds. It was at 2.8 before those games. He also has a much lower average or off target rate. It's at 6% or lower in each of the past 3 games after being double digits in each of the first 4 games. So we're seeing shorter, quicker passing, more targets to Brian Thomas Jr. I think Evan Ingram being back helps as well. And, one of those matches was against the Colts, but he also had Bears on the road, and I thought played reasonably well in that game, and then pretty well against the Patriots. So I'm I don't know, cautiously optimistic about this passing offense going forward. The schedule in the second half is really rough. So I did rest of season rankings last week, and I had Brian Thomas Jr. at like wide receiver 30 or something. And people are like, "What? You've been telling me all year that he's, and it's like, yeah, man, it's rough. But at the same time, he won against Christian Gonzalez, so maybe it just doesn't matter.
You really wide receiver 30? I can't believe that.
I was shocked. I missed that. I can't believe that either.
Yeah,
it was probably too low, but I also have very little faith in the offense and the coaching and every single thing around Brian Thomas Jr. and his offensive environment.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll see. It's just, I don't know. It's a lot to ask a rookie receiver to just completely be the driving force behind an entire offense.
Fair.
Yeah. All right. I'm pretty excited about him though. And the Bears game was in London, but it's still, roadish game. But the Bears are just so good against wide receivers. Even though they were missing 2 starters, they are so good against wide receivers. So I'll give Thomas a pass on that one.
Yeah, Jalen Johnson's a stud for sure. Tank Bigsby, I wanted to bring him up. He had a 66% snap rate, 74% of the running back rushes. When it was in the red zone, those numbers only went up. But I think this is really game script dependent. I think he's probably the most clear sell in fantasy football. Yeah. When the Jaguars can control a game on the ground, he's probably going to have a good game. But the next 4 games are the Packers, Eagles, Chiefs, and Lions.
Great point.
Right? Like they're almost definitely going to be losing in those games.
Can't see him having any impact. That's a great point. I mean, unless he has a big run again, he's going to be a tough start in any of those.
Yeah. All right.
Let's be passing game. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's keep it rolling. Good vibes here. Sam LaPorta. Target share by game.
Good vibes.
No, it's terrible. 18%, 6%. This is target share by game. Sam LaPorta. 18%, 6%, 9%, 21%, 4%, 8%. So he's been below.
Ask you a question, both of you, real quick about this. I haven't had a chance to watch his tape. I don't know if you have, Jacob, or you, Adam.
No.
Is it possible that he's not being as utilized in the offense because he's not fully healthy?
That's interesting. I'll look into like some of I'll probably write about him this week on In the Lab on Friday. I do think his separation stuff has looked worse than the year before, but still middle of the pack, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So below.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Below 10% in 4 of 6 games. Last year, he was above 10% in 16 of 17 games. I think it's mostly just that he's just not part of the offense, really. This was even a game where Jameson Williams was not targeted.
Right.
Jameson Williams is 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
How many does Jameson Williams have? 12 targets in his last 4 games? I think it might be 11.
He's a tough start, but he's so good when he gets the ball. It's like one play could change a week, but he's a tough start.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Amari is like right there at like 30% target share, even with all these other guys. Like he's just an alpha.
So good.
It's 10 targets in his last 4 games for Jameson Williams.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a really random no. We don't know what's going to happen with the Browns. If it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, then that's probably a problem, and none of the receivers are going to be that relevant. But Cedric Tillman, round 3 pick last year, he was thought of as like kind of a project receiver. He's shown some encouraging signs, but overall hasn't done hardly anything. But in the first game with Amari Cooper, he was second on the team in routes, ahead of Elijah Moore, 12 targets, 127 air yards, first on the team in receiving yards with 81 receiving yards. So maybe a name to know. Definitely a guy you should have picked up in Dynasty last week and pick him up this week if he's still out there. Erick finally ran more routes than Mike Gesicki, first time all year. Didn't do anything. But if you believe in this Bengals offense and how well Joe Burrow's been playing, then I think he's looking like somebody who might be a league winner, whether it was just ACL was the reason they're easing him in or just because he's young. I don't know, but it seems like he's working his way in where he's like going to be close to a full-time player by the end of the year is my guess. Joe Mixon had 63% of the offensive touches and 54% of the Texans' scrimmage yards this week. Alvin Kamara is the only other player to hit both marks. It's bad in Houston right now. They really, really need Nico Collins back. The offense just looks broken. They've been asking Stroud to just do it, just be kind of hero ball. And then this week that totally fell apart. And so they're just like, I guess Joe Mixon go do it. Like, I don't know. We don't have any answers. Did you guys watch that game?
I actually did.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
No, you go first, Adam. I know.
I watched. So I wanted to see if Jair Alexander, because they got into the fight pregame. I wanted to see if Jair Alexander shadowed Stephon Diggs, and he didn't. And then I just started watching all of their snaps. And the biggest issue to me was pass protection. I believe CJ Stroud was pressured second or third most highest rate this past week.
51%. And this Packers defense has been like very bottom of the league in pressure going into this game.
Yeah, so their offensive line is really not playing well enough right now. I didn't really look like closely enough to see if there was a lot of separation because the plays were just blown up. So it's obviously, I think it's just a Nico Collins thing. Like you said, when he gets back, it just changes everything. But also, I said this on one of our shows last week. At what point in this season or next off season are we going to hear Tank Dell say, well, yeah, you know what? I'm just finally 100% back from my broken leg, right? Like the guy is doing nothing explosive, nothing downfield.
Like Pollard last year with the same injury, right?
Exactly. No, Pollard, I think was an ankle, maybe the same injury.
Pollard had the same injury, yeah.
Same concept. Oh, was the same injury? Okay, same concept, right? It's like you get all these reports going into the season. He's 100%. He's 100%. And maybe he is. I don't know. But then mid-season, there was this bombshell in the fantasy community drop. Tony Pollard, not 100% healthy, hasn't been all year. It's like, oh, of course. Well, that's why he's been so bad. So I'm wondering if that's the issue with Tank Dell. And yeah, they have no explosive players with Nico out and this version of Tank Dell.
One thing I want to add in is just as good as CJ Stroud is, and I think anyone who watches can see the way he manipulates a pocket, the arm talent, the ball placement, the anticipation, the velocity. It does happen for a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, no matter who you are, where once you get into that year two and defense coordinators have what they say is about between 8 and 12 games on film, they can start, especially in the same system, they can start taking away some of the concepts that worked for you. And I read in a crazy stat, I think it was from you, Jacob, and you can confirm if this was from you with the actual stat in a second, but the Packers destroyed the Texans' game plan and everything they want to do on offense without blitzing at all. They didn't send extra rushers, and yet they pressured Stroud the entire game. That shows issues with the pass protection, but it also shows issues with the scheme, in my opinion, because it shows that some of these were coverage sacks or coverage incompletions or just issues within the route concepts, issues within what the Texans want to do and how the Packers are tuned in to what the Texans are running from a route combination standpoint. I have to watch the tape to confirm that. I saw that game live, did not watch the tape on it. So we'll see. But I think there's obviously an issue with the Texans passing game once Nico's not in the game.
Yeah, 17% blitz rate and 51% pressure rate.
Wow, 17-51 is crazy splits for that.
That's bad, yeah. That's bad. Okay. All right, we got to get to our 4 big topics, Jacob. So why don't you wrap us up?
We're wrapped.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. And I'll say that the Texans, I feel like we could come up with a list of offenses that should be doing better than they are. And
what would that be? What would that be? Texans for sure. Jets.
Even before the Adams trade, the Jets, the Texans, Jaguars, the Eagles. I think like the Eagles, like the stats aren't that bad, but it just feels like it should be easier for them. And the Bengals, the Jaguars for sure, and the Bengals to me are another team because we're going to talk about Chase Brown. And at the end of the day, like Joe Burrow still ranks pretty high. Jamar Chase still scoring his touch.
49ers is a good one.
Niners. They've had some injuries, but Niners should be better. I think they'll be better when McCaffrey's back, I'm hoping. But like the Bengals offense to me needs that easy button. I don't know why are they not killing it? They're fine. I'm just interested because I know you watch your Chase Brown tape. I'm sure you have a lot to say about it. We're going to talk about him in a minute. Let me give you some snap share things here. Zach Charbonnet played more than Ken Walker. I have no idea why. It wasn't even like a fourth quarter blowout thing.
Ken Walker was out partying for his birthday.
Oh, that's right. He was sick. I forgot about that. So, okay, that's why then. With Amari Cooper on the field. With him on the field. Josh Allen threw 11 passes. 5 of them went to Cooper. 2 went to Shakir. The other 4 went to 2 tight ends and 2 running backs. Keon Coleman did not have a single target with Amari Cooper on the field yesterday.
He also didn't play any more in the slot. Some people were like, did he move and do some big slot stuff? No.
Who? Coleman?
Coleman.
Devon Achane ran 9 routes on third down. Raheem Mostert ran 3. We now have 10 running backs averaging 17 or more PPR fantasy points this season. That is compared to 6 in each of the previous 2 seasons. It does include Kareem Hunt. So if you wanted to remove him, fine. But it doesn't include Aaron Jones, who's at 16.9 points per game and left the game early. So that's 10 running backs averaging 17 or more. It's a year of the running back right now. Tyrone Tracy played 39 snaps. Devin Singletary played 12. You knew that. Alexander Madison played 70% of the snaps. He split third down work with Amir Abdullah. It's a great role for him. A guy I'm really interested in as a sneaky buy low. Like Dave was talking about buying Chase Brown low like 3 weeks ago, and it looked like he didn't have much value. Xavier Worthy. He only played 60% of the snaps, but he has 14 targets in his last 2 games. He had 15 targets in his first 4 games combined. He could have had a 69-yard touchdown. Mahomes missed him on a deep ball. He needs a better quarterback for sure. No,
Whoa.
JK, but Mahomes
missed him on a wheel route in the red zone too. Mahomes overthrew that one. They just don't have their rapport seem just not down at all to me.
Agreed. But I do see potential for him to lead the wide receivers in targets and kind of be like it's not going to be immediate, but maybe Xavier Worthy. Put it this way, don't drop him unless you have to. Try to stash him.
Yeah, I like that. I'm fine with that.
And the quarterbacks who were pressured the most in week 7, I'm going to go 5-1 here.
Okay.
Number 5 was a tie between the Saints quarterbacks and Joe Burrow. Number 4, the Carolina quarterbacks. Number 3, CJ Stroud. Number 2, Daniel Jones. Notice none of these guys really had great games. Burrow was fine. Number 1, this guy has been the best quarterback under pressure this year. He has been arguably the best quarterback just from a passing standpoint this year. Jared Goff was pressured 58.6% of the time, and he is completing what I think it was like 85% of his passes over the last 4 weeks.
Goff is crazy. He's the only quarterback who's been able to solve Brian Flores so far this year.
And he was pressured on almost 60% of his dropbacks. Unbelievable. All right, 4 big topics when we come back. We'll start with Javonte Williams.
By the way, that was how teams used to get Jared Goff. That's what led us to all those bad fantasy days. Whenever you could pressure him, he was bad. Now he has a solution for the pressure.
All right, we'll be right back on FFT.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
So the first 2 questions are is this running back going to be a top 10 or top 12 running back? And I'll just say, based on the stat you just heard me give about the running backs averaging 17 or more PPR fantasy points, being a top 10 or 12 running back is a pretty high bar this year. It's not that easy. But I know what you mean when you say this question from Patrick, is Javonte Williams in line to finish as a top 10 running back now? Whether or not he does, I know what you mean. Is he going to feel like it? A must-start guy, right? Let's just say that. We don't have to be nitpicking with, is he going to be 10th or whatever. But Javonte Williams is the first one. Is he going to be a top 12-ish running back? I'll alter the question to that. He was only started in 50% of leagues, scored 26.1 fantasy points against the Saints on Thursday. Jacob, you're up first on Javonte.
Yes, I want to get back to Dan's point about stack boxes, actually. I think that both these backfields are important ones to bring up in this regard. Javonte he's tied with Zach Moss for the 3rd highest stack box rate. I think in his case, it has a lot to do with QB play. But with the Bengals, you wouldn't expect that to have anything to do with QB play, right? Right. I think that's a case where it's mostly about personnel. The Bengals are using 2 and even 3 tight ends way more than they ever had before. And that's not like, I looked it up just to be sure. I filtered out plays where Mike Gesicki wasn't on the field because I was worried that maybe he was affecting that because they use him as a receiver, but he's like technically designated a tight end, but it didn't change anything. They're using like Tanner Hudson all the time and stuff like that. Drew Sample all the time. And so, yeah, I'm curious to hear what Dan has to say about their running game because I know he hates the coaching over there, and I get it. It's not been effective, but Chase Brown has been good. So both those guys are contending with a lot of stack boxes, whether that's due to predictability because of the coaching or the quarterback play. I don't feel super great about Javonte. I dug into him after his game because people have been saying he looked good. He looked better. And people have been saying he's kind of like back. Nothing has changed statistically. And when I watched the film, it felt like there were just a lot of really huge holes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I'll get into this. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
No, the Saints were horrible on Thursday. It was an absolutely embarrassing performance. But He doesn't have a run longer than 20 yards this year. In fact, he doesn't have a run longer than 21 yards in his last 3 seasons, which of course had a torn ACL, but that is 337 carries now without a run longer than 20 yards for Javonte Williams. But the first 2 games of the year were bad for him. The last 4 games of the year, I think the metrics are pretty good. I mean, the explosive run rate, the avoid rate, that kind of stuff. So is it just a blip on the radar? Is it because he's faced some easy matchups here? I don't know. But the bottom line, like the big thing for me is that he has 17 or more touches in 3 of his last 4 games. And the one time he didn't, they lost 23-16 to a good Chargers defense. They had the ball for 22 minutes and 37 seconds. He's been getting about 60% of the running back carries, but he also gets about 3 catches. So it's enough touches for me to say he goes into the week as probably a starter, and you move him up or down based on the matchups. And you have to account for the fact that the Broncos could just have an awful offensive game. It's going to hold him back. But I'm higher on him now because he's kind of dominating the touches amongst the Broncos running backs.
So for me, I think he's mostly dominated those touches because of game script. Broncos are 4-3. I think that game script will fall apart in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
And the first 3 carries of this game against the Saints were a run to Aldrich Estime to start the game, a run to Javonte Williams, and then a run to Jaleel McLaughlin. So it's not like they've just totally phased those guys out. They didn't play as much in the end of the game, in the middle part of the game, because the Broncos had a lead, and Javonte Williams is that back for those games. But I watched the tape, and he doesn't look at – I just – look, he's better than he looked last year off the ACL, but he does not look like the player I watched at UNC at all. At all. He almost led all of college football history in forced missed tackle rate at UNC. He's not doing that. His biggest run came on a zone run where the hole was wide open, and any running back could have run through it. And I don't even think he was that quick through the hole. So I see no upside in games with bad game script. I think he'll get off the field in those games. I think he's one of the best sells in fantasy, but I would probably wait for the Panthers game, because he'll probably have another good game against the Panthers.
Yeah, but let me say, okay, so you have to know your league. How savvy are your managers? Because his next 3 opponents, it's the Panthers, which is the best matchup in fantasy.
Yes.
They're last against running backs. And then after that, it's the Ravens and the Chiefs, and they are the worst matchups in fantasy. The Ravens are second best. The Chiefs are the best in fantasy against running backs. So I think you guys have kind of laid it out nice. Like he is.
Maybe you sell. No, it's a good point though. Maybe you sell before the Panthers, because you convinced the manager you got this great matchup. You're going to score a lot this week. Take it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I guess I would say if I felt like they were going to be in good game scripts, I'd be more confident in him. You're probably right. I shouldn't buy in. We shouldn't have a lot of faith in the offense, really. No. These next 3 matchups, 2 of them are absolutely miserable. And then Tyler Bidet could come back at some point, and maybe they want to get him. Well, you never know. But don't discount the fact that they throw to the running back so much. That is what is going to help Javonte. So even in a good the
history of Sean Payton fantasy football running backs under Sean Payton is really strong. Dave Richard did a lot of great research on that last offseason, but ultimately game script will be the determining factor, I think.
All right, we good? Should we go to Chase Brown?
Let's do it.
All right, this is a fun one here. The question from Patrick is Chase Brown's usage a sign of a second half top 12 running back? And I kind of made the case for that last night. After evaluating the game, a little less optimistic about that, I guess, but still optimistic. But Dan, where are you on Chase Brown?
Sorry, I just got a quick notification from Brian Dable named Jones the starter. So I take back what I said earlier. He will be starting for this week. Now, as far as Chase Brown goes, watch the film on that. I think Chase Brown is a phenomenal talent. He had a 28-yard run that was called back by a holding penalty. That kind of changed the total stat line. But the issue I still have with buying into this fully is I don't trust the Bengals. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I don't trust the Bengals run game at all, their run concepts. And there was still a good mix of Zach Moss in this game. It wasn't like they totally phased him out of the offense. So for me, Chase Brown will be the guy you play in matchups where you think the Bengals are going to score points, high implied totals for the Bengals. The Browns was never a matchup. The Browns have been stopping Joe Burrow since Jim Schwartz became that defensive coordinator almost every time they faced him. And he's still going to make plays in the passing game because that's where they still have design looks for him and in the red zone. So I feel like he's more of like an RB2 for me moving forward.
They don't trust him to pass block. He
Yeah.
has 4 pass blocking snaps all year, 1 in this past game. And that's why Moss is still on the field so much, is that hasn't changed.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, Joe Mixon was never their third down guy. It was always Pirine. And he still had a lot of catches. You know, he was like a 50-ish catch guy when healthy. And he was a top 12 running back per game almost every year.
Part of the scheme has always been, this is what I do like about Bengals running backs. Part of that Zach Taylor scheme has always been to use the running backs in the passing game, not on just checkdowns, on design look. So I do think that's important.
He basically has to dominate the carries. That's the thing.
Right.
The Bengals, I think each of the last 2 years, they were among the lowest in the NFL in running back carries. But it didn't matter because Mixon got pretty much every one. If there's a split, it's not going to be good enough. But in yesterday's game, 6 carries for Zach Moss and 15 carries for Chase Brown. That's going to do it. And Chase Brown had 2 catches and Zach Moss had 3. So Chase Brown will come off the field on third down. But if he can be Mixon, if he can get, this is what I thought about Zach Moss. I was like, if he can just take Joe Mixon's role, then he's going to be awesome. But Moss just hasn't run well enough. He's had the opportunity. I think they gave him the first shot to be the lead running back. He blew it. Chase Brown has been better. I am excited here. I don't know about top 12.
I had Javonte at RB27 and Moss at 21 last week, rest of season. And I actually wrote about not Moss, Brown specifically. And I was like, I think you could push him as high as RB12 or 13. Do we have time to get into the names ahead of him? Or
yeah, absolutely.
So like Christian McCaffrey, if you want to just push him ahead of him and Jordan Mason, I think that can make sense. Chuba Hubbard, you could push him ahead of him. I think that makes sense. Brian Robinson, that's tough. James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Kamara, maybe. Those are the guys ahead of him to get him to that top 12 range.
I would say that I could see it. It's certainly, you could easily see a scenario where he's better. We don't have an answer for who the goal line back is, but I want to say he was on the field on 4th and 1, Chase Brown. But I would say no to, I don't think I'd put him ahead of any of those guys except for Jordan Mason. But I could see it with pretty much all of them. I don't think I could see him being better than McCaffrey unless there's an injury.
I think you could move him ahead of Conner. He's playing basically the same role, and Arizona's offense kind of sucks.
Yeah, fair. All right, let's go to good ecosystem. Is late round quarterback stronger than ever? Should every quarterback just be streamed? Look at the top 12 quarterbacks by week since the beginning of the season, how they were ranked, who their matchup was. Is matchup more important than name?
I mean, I've always been a big proponent of matchups when it comes to quarterback position, streaming, and I'm not usually somebody who invests heavily at the top of the position. That had changed, and Chris Towers, who used to write for us on fantasy on the football side, did some great research the last 2 to 3 off seasons where the top of the quarterback had become worth investing in, but that has seemed to kind of collapse in itself. I mean, Allen and Hurts have been pretty good, but not elite. Mahomes is a total bust. Really disappointed. I drafted him in so many spots. And, Lamar is still great, but you can get that production from Jared Goff, who was, in the QB 13 range before the season. So I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel. I don't think I have a great answer on that. I'll defer to you guys.
I feel the same. You want elite quarterbacks, and if not, then you can stream. So like JJ Zachariason and Denny Carter on living this stream. I love those guys. They have proven like year after year that they've been able to basically produce like QB 7 or 8 type production, literally just streaming over the course of full seasons. So, yeah, I don't think anything has really changed in this regard. I think that's where we've been with the position for a long time. And, yeah, of course, matchups are important. Read the FF2 newsletter every Wednesday and Thursday because, like, you find matchups where it really does make a difference, like whether that's pressure, whether that's expected game script, and, like, how often teams pass when they're leading or trailing, all that kind of stuff. Like, knowing that stuff is definitely important.
Well, I think I want Lamar Jackson. He's the guy that I feel like is probably the one player, if I'm playing against him, I just feel like, I am screwed. I don't have any Lamar Jackson, and I don't have any Derrick Henry either. And those are the 2 guys, I guess, if I'm like, I'm screwed. I'm probably going to lose this week. So I want Lamar Jackson. Other than that, I don't know that there's going to be Jayden Daniels, maybe Josh Allen. Now that Cooper's there, maybe Allen, but I don't know that there's going to be a guy that's just winning you weeks. But this is a change because two seasons ago, the elite quarterbacks were so much better than everyone else. And last year, it was not even close to being the case. But last year just wasn't really a good year for quarterbacks. This year, we thought this was going to be a good year for quarterbacks, and I think the depth has pretty much been there. Imagine if Caleb Williams keeps it going. Stroud will be better. Baker Mayfield's been an incredible story. Geno Smith is absolutely worth streaming. I honestly think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a decent streamer some weeks. Yeah, I think it's a pretty deep position. Maybe the only quarterback I would pay up for in trade right now is Lamar Jackson. That's pretty much how I feel.
People are asking for the Jacob Gibbs impression, Dan, in the comments. I think I sound particularly sleepy today, which is fair. Kind of how I feel.
No Jacob Gibbs impression today. I have to, plan that one out a little bit and kind of practice because I didn't love my last one. I could have done better on it.
The next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely brutal for me. I mean, we got no bye week, no teams on a bye this week, which is tough. I think only 2 teams on a bye next week, and the Yankees are in the World Series, and it's going to consume my life.
Some late nights for Adam coming. And what's Miami still undefeated?
Miami's still undefeated. We got Florida State coming up this week. I don't know if anybody's seen what these Florida State fans are doing, what they're eating when FSU loses. Are you seeing this?
No.
Schaefer, have you seen this?
Tweets, you mean?
No, they're eating dog crap. Like this.
That was what the guy did. He actually
do
it though?
Yeah, this guy's like, if we lose to Duke, I'm going to eat dog crap.
And he did it.
It was like the second week of the season or something. Some fan was like, I'm going to eat dog crap if we lose, and they lost. And I don't think he did it. But then this FSU fan last week said, if we lose to Duke, I will do it. And he did it. And I started watching it, and I had to turn it off. It was absolutely disgusting.
Okay,
I see your face, Jacob. It was as shocking and revolting as your face indicates right now. Like it was. Did you watch it, Schaefer? No, you didn't watch it.
No,
we don't have all.
I'm not watching that. No.
It was
who's watching that video. Really, Adam's like
Adam is.
And Adam's grinding the tape through the video. He's like, actually, at the 04 mark, you see the guy cut open into it and really start to devour it. You see him mushing around, chewing around in there. He's chewing around at the 08 mark.
All right, forget it. I won't get into the details. But
let me ask you a quick question, Adam. I'm going to change the subject and get us back to football for a quick second. Yeah. Okay, you're going to have to give me a 1 to 10 scale. 10 being amazing, 1 being horrible. Giants end up with the 4th pick overall in the draft. They select Cam Ward. 1 to 10, me.
6.
Okay, so you're somewhat confident he can be a really good NFL quarterback.
Hell of an arm.
Okay.
Did you see the throw he made in the back of the end zone, rolling
on the back of the end zone? I haven't watched any of his tape yet, so I have no opinion.
He's done that this year, but he's a little bit too much of a gunslinger, and quite frankly, a lot too cocky for me. I like a nice humble quarterback.
On that note, Drake May, nice humble quarterback. People are talking about him in the comments. We've been highlighting him. He's one of my biggest hits this year, I guess, on like later round QBs. I thought he looked a lot better this week. His average time to throw was down. He got the ball a lot quicker and like trusted the offense. He had some tough plays by his receivers that like it could have been an even bigger day. I'm psyched about this guy, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the guys I immediately watched, one of my favorite players in the class. I'm excited to talk with Nate Tice about him. Few things to note. He had 2 big drops from Jalen Polk. Also, the anticipation. This is what really matters to me. When you watch a quarterback throw with anticipation, the 90-yard drive he led with a seam ball to Hunter Henry, unbelievable. Most quarterbacks don't even attempt the seam, can let alone make a pass there. The deep ball connection that was outside shoulder, outside the hashes, dropped right in the breadbasket. And that 3rd and long touchdown, 3rd and goal, 3rd and long from like the 15. Just great anticipation on the throw. He has natural anticipation for position. Great arm talent, uses all levels of the field, challenges all areas of the field, which is going to force defenses to play off the ball and play him differently. And on top of all that, he was dealing with the Patriots' 8th offensive line combination of the year. No real talent at the wide receiver position. Yeah. In my opinion, a bottom 10 play caller as well. No offense to Van Pelt. So I just think that Drake May did way more than anyone could have expected.
Absolutely. You just see it. You're like, oh boy. Like it kind of reminds me of when you saw it early with Love, where it's like, this could be different.
Exactly. That's what it looked like at UNC too. And he dealt with horrible offensive line play there his entire career as well.
All right. I don't know if that kicked off our conversation about second half sleepers, but that's our last topic.
One of them
from Morgan. Second half sleepers. And by the way, Morgan is in the chat. So thank you for your question, Morgan. Who are some second half sleepers, guys?
I'll go with one to start. I'll go with let's go with Keon Coleman. So I know there's been a lot of discussion around the Coleman situation. A lot of people some people made the case that
it's like this. I disagree very strongly, but I am also the same guy We said someone had a question: is Kareem Hunt going to be a league winner? And
We're talking about sleepers here. We got to dig deep.
Hell no, I was way wrong about that. All right, go ahead, make your case for Keon Coleman.
No, I'm just going to say I saw Jacob tweet a little bit about it. 22% target share, 34% air yardage share for him. These are all career bests for him. I just think he's a talented enough player. I liked his valuation in the draft, and I think he has a chance to be a sleeper. Now, I'm not saying it's because Cooper was added yesterday, but I think in general, Cooper's addition to this offense is going to help players like Keon Coleman and anyone who's on the field, because Josh Allen threw for 325 against a defense that had limited passing games for the most part going into that game. Things are going to get better for what?
They didn't have Snead. They didn't have their top cornerback, but
okay.
Fair point.
Things are getting, yeah.
What about the stat I gave that he didn't have a single target when Amari Cooper was on the field?
That's bad. That's not a great stat. Look, we're digging deep for sleepers. Like my other guys I have on my list.
Cooper only ran 12 routes, to be fair.
Look, sleepers, we can't say like George Pickens going to have a breakout or like, like you have to dig deep. And like my other guys are even deeper calls. So we'll see what happens when we get to those. I might get immediate buzzard again.
I actually don't have any names, so you can just keep on going.
I'll do two more and then I'll let Jacob take over because I think he's going to do a better job than me. My next guy on my list was Ricky Pearsall. Deal with Ricky Pearsall. Saw the stats on the routes as well from Jacob. 32 routes and 37 dropbacks. I like that. 18 in the slot. I like that a lot. For me, when it comes to Ricky Pearsall, I'm just sticking with my evaluation of what I saw on tape at Florida. He was Lad McConkey, but I felt like he was a better version. He had the ability to high point and make catches away from his frame. Really good in that contested catch situations. Explosive in and out of his breaks. And he's on an offense that I believe will get much better once Christian McCaffrey returns. So he's just somebody I'm betting on talent. I'm betting on the draft pedigree. I'm betting on the offensive system, and I'm betting on increased usage. I can't think of a better guy for me to stash. I actually have him above Coleman, even though I mentioned Coleman first. Last one for me.
Just counterpoint.
Yes.
I like where your head's at there, but I actually would say Juwan Jennings.
Yep.
I think he's going to play ahead.
That was my first name. I'm really glad that you brought up.
I'm fine with that too, but I think both can make impact the rest of the season. We'll see if I'm wrong or right about that. Last one. Jerry Jeudy. We're talking, remember, we have to do sleepers here. We're not just like saying like, oh, like you could just pick like Tony Pollard. Like you can't pick names. It's sleepers for a reason. And when it comes to Jerry Jeudy, I like the upside if Jameis Winston can play. You don't like this one?
No, I just like, obviously I'm not going to say Tony Pollard. Who's going to say Tony Pollard? Like
what? Like, okay, who would you have said? First of all, Adam, you came up with 0.
Oh, I think Xavier Worthy is definitely one. Someone said it in the chat, but I was going to say it as well. Kamani Vidal is someone you really should.
That's what I'm on.
Trey Benson is definitely someone that
That's what I'm on.
There you go.
Disappointed in myself. I don't like my sleepers the more I think about it. But you know what? I'll go back to the drawing board and I'll be better next week.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob. Give us good names.
Jonathan Brooks, of course. Blake Corum and Kimani Vidal. Both of those guys, their starting running backs are people who have had health issues in the past, and they have to maintain like health for 2.5 months straight because they already had early season bye weeks. So if you can afford to use a roster spot on one of those guys, do it. Tyjae Spears, same kind of thing. I'm worried about Tony Pollard holding up. The offense is absolutely abysmal. They have to their only choice is to like run everything through Pollard. He's playing really well, but man, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that for, the next 6 to 8 weeks. And if he doesn't, then Spears comes back healthy and has a really nice runway with the matchups at the end of the year. He's probably free. I would guess he's getting dropped in a lot of leagues. Trey Benson, we know James Conner gets hurt. Wide receiver. I did this last week in the newsletter. I think I might do this going forward on Fridays. It's like players I would buy if I have a 5-1 team or whatever. Players I would be looking to buy if I need immediate help. Darnell Mooney, I think, is somebody to buy who might help you a lot in the immediate, like short term. Him and Jordan Addison, I think they're a little bit overlooked. They've got some potential shootouts coming up these next few weeks. And then long term guys, it's I don't know, maybe this is too mainstream of a name for Dan, but Jalen Waddle seems like you could get him really, really cheap, and it sounds like Tua is coming back.
Yeah, I like that buy.
Yeah, and Schaefer's giving me crap for picking players who are rostered. I didn't know this was supposed to be just free agent sleepers. I think it's also like kind of like buy lows.
We already hit on Erick All, and then Juwan Jennings, for real. Like, I just want to prioritize this. He's 4th in the NFL behind Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and Chris Godwin in fantasy points per route run. His per route data is absolutely insane this year. 25% target per route run rate, 2.8 yards per route run. That's third best. And if you look at his career without Ayuk on the field, this is a small sample size, 66 routes. But only 11 of these came this year. So it's the bulk of the sample size was accumulated before this season. Without Ayuk on the field, 24% target per route run rate, identical to what I just said there, 25%, 2.73 yards per route run, basically identical to this year's numbers. So we have some precedent that suggests that what he's doing this year isn't completely random.
I'm excited.
And without Ayuk, I think he's the most logical guy to play the X receiver role. It was Chris Conley this past week. I don't know. To me, like a receiver trio of Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, and him seems a bit redundant. So I'm worried that Chris Conley might play more than Ricky Pearsall people want. I don't know. But either way, I do think he's going to be heavily involved and potentially their top target down the field.
This Pearsall call by me has not been well received by anybody but our producer, Schaefer. I will say this. Earlier this show, Adam snapped on a commenter today in the private chat. Adam was really, really nasty towards Thomas in one of these comments. Adam, what is going on with you, buddy? You should be happy. The Yankees are in the World Series. Everything is going right in your world. Miami's undefeated. What is going on, man?
Well, it's probably just the Giants. No, I'm in a great mood today. I
snapped on Schaefer.
I didn't snap on Schaefer. I was joking, calling him a mean word.
I don't know if that didn't read like a joke.
He gave me, I think, unfair criticism. I think I'm being unfairly criticized today.
So quite clearly you weren't joking. Now that the truth came out, you felt like you were being unfairly criticized, so you snapped at Schaefer. It's okay. We all have our moments.
Jalen Tolbert, another sleeper for me, but not like a huge.
I like Tolbert.
Sure.
I would say Dak Prescott is a buy low. I think
maybe.
I just think it could not possibly be any worse for Dak Prescott, and hopefully the Cowboys offense just in general. There's another offense, right? They underachieving. Which teams aren't underachieving offensively? It's crazy, but all right, that's it. I think that's a good list there. Thank you very much. Juwan Jennings is almost certainly going to be my number one waiver wire priority tomorrow, if he's available in leagues that I am in. Thank you, Dan and Jacob, and I'm not going to thank Schaefer today. He's going to have to earn that. He's going to have to earn that tomorrow. We'll talk to you tomorrow with the waiver wire on Fantasy Football Today.